Hello. Good morning on this sun streaming in day in interesting times. Now, I'm not sure how you've been coping without dating the show too much. Early 2020s, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody has been having a horrifically tough time, no matter where you are in the world. I'd probably say that early 2020s was a time in your life and work life and world where you'd rather go, let's just let that mindset go. And if you're anything like me, if you're anything like me, you're probably finding out that that mindset is an ongoing issue with you. For anybody who knows me, hello, I'm Lottie Hernan. Thank you very much for joining me on Live with Lottie. Now, for anybody who knows me, you know I've gone through interesting health times, been through the bowel cancer, survived that, and then for the last year, 2019 to 2020, learning how to live with multiple sclerosis, MS. Now, it was really interesting when COVID-19 hit because for me, it was amazing. I've been in isolation at home, stuck at home, and I've been working from home for years doing this kind of thing and live streaming, connecting with you, fabulous viewers, for years and years and years. But the whole concept of everybody being in lockdown or shut away actually was a bit of an escape for me. Because I know people talk about like the prison of the mind and being stuck in and people having really, really tough mental times. For me, that's actually part of a new life. And it's really weird as you go through the end of lockdown and everybody starts to come out and celebrate. And I've seen people out in the streets in the sunshine and woohoo and partying. And it's actually made me, oh gosh, here I go. I'm getting emotional at the beginning of the show. It's made me even more aware and more conscious of how difficult it is to be really trapped in a physical state in your body or in your mind. And so when I met my guest today and actually heard her life story, just you wait, folks. So I'm going to read a little bit out about Linda because I want to make sure the impact of this hits through to you. Linda Sage, all sorts of PhDs, all sorts of letters and after MDs and letters and numbers, letters after her name. She is probably one of the biggest brain experts, criminal psychologist, no less, which I love because that's my half sister in New Zealand. She studied criminal psychology. Haven't even told Linda that yet. But Linda says she threw off her corporate garb after a culmination of emotional, physical, and psychological burnout. That was after being an eminent criminal psychologist and working in some of the UK's most famous women's prisons. I think it's just women's prisons, but we'll check that shortly, with some of the most notorious prisoners in recent history. After her burnout, she chucked everything in. She's going to tell us this story. But for 6 years, she never spoke about her psychology background because she needed to repair and rebuild herself. Since traveling from the UK, escaping to Spain, then going to Saudi, a whole nother for women prison of reality. I'm sure she might tell us more about that. But then coming back to the UK, it took her, as I did in the YouTube write-up and in the Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook, and wherever you're watching, as she said, it took her over 11 years to be able to confront some of the issues that she herself and the burnout she herself and the challenges and the prison of the mind and how to overcome it. So here to share more about her amazing, amazing journey, please give a massive Live with Lottie shout out to the most wonderful woman I've met in ages, Linda Sage. And Linda will be joining us in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Linda!
Hey, thank you, Lottie.
Did I do you justice? Was I saying the right things?
That was amazing. Yes, thank you so much.
So Linda, I want to get straight on because I know you've got such a wealth of knowledge. And for anybody who saw the show poster, your book that you wrote, you're going to be telling us all about that. So having called the show today, How to Escape from Your Prisoner in Here, or the prisoner fears, I call, because I always hate talking online about overcoming fears and overcoming nerves. I always talk about maximizing your nerves and bring it to be amazing energy on screen. So Linda, first let's start off with a bit more about your story. But before you do, can you give us one really solid top tip about overcoming fears or getting out of that prison of your mind?
Number one tip.
Yep.
Get out of denial, because we live in denial for so long, and until we come out of it, we're never ever going to start coming up the journey to recuperation again.
Oh my God, Linda, that has so hit a nerve with me, because that's been my last couple of weeks, and actually the last day since I recorded a radio interview with you. Thank you. It was so lovely. And your production team, and we've had the tech hitches and glitches today with Linda of setting up the show. And I was saying to Linda, that's the joy of having a producer who creates a show for you, whether it be radio, podcast, video, live, whatever it is. Yeah. So that's denial, Linda, that is totally ringing a bell with me, because with my MS, like, as I said, as people are coming out, here I am, I'm shaking it as a result of even thinking about it. As people are coming out of a lockdown in early 2020, mid 2020, after COVID-19, I'm actually feeling I want to go back in, and I want to deny that anything's happening. So before we talk more about that, tell us a bit more about you, because I can't wait to fully hear your full story that kind of kicked off with you as a criminal psychologist. So give us the talk all about you, Linda.
I must admit, everybody else is talking about being in lockdown and things like this, but it's actually the longest I've been out of prison, for over 3 years. So it's been quite a nice change for me. But most of my adult life, I've been involved one way and another with prison, but I've been involved in mental health prisons, your own prison, for a lot longer than that as well. But what we do is...
Can I just interject there very quickly, because I want to be very, very clear. It's not that you've been in prison. You've been working with prisoners in prison and helping those people in prison.
Well, both. I mean, I've been in my psychological prison for a lot of years, even knowing all of the theory and the practical thing. Inside here, knowing and doing are two completely different things. So although I was functioning on a daily basis within other people's environments and helping them move through their issues and do reports and all sorts of other things, within my own my own barriers were building higher and higher because of what I said before about denial. The most famous phrases is, I'm fine, I'm okay. And what happens is, even people that are brave enough to ask you, you just bite their heads off, because your emotions are all over the place. You're in tears, or you're angry very, very quickly. You isolate yourself, even from people that you like being with. You devalue yourself. You feel overwhelmed by everything, but you just keep thinking, oh, I'll push it to the back. I'll push it to the back. I'll keep going. And that's exactly what I did, until the day it just burst the banks. And unfortunately,
you actually speaking about it now, Linda, is actually making me do it too. So I know this is going to be a cathartic show for me, but it's I think for so many other people out there, it's just you even talking about it. We know, those of us who do this kind of things and open up on, when we open up on show for the whole world to see, it can be very, very tough for people. I'm used to this. That's where I came with camera ready face, folks, no makeup, because I knew I was going to be crying my eyes out. So Linda, let's go back to the start then and tell us a bit more about your in-depth story.
I started off when I went to university. I was the first one to go to university in my family. My father was so happy, and off I went down to Canterbury University, and I still hadn't made my mind up what I wanted to do. But he imagined it was going to be a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer. They were sort of the main ones then. Going back then, we didn't have so many choices as you do now. And when I went down, I spoke to one of the lecturers there, and he said, "Oh, before you do anything, go and see this lecture." So off I went, as you do. And when I came out, that was it. I found home. Psychology just fitted like a glove. But unfortunately, my dad didn't have the same opinion. And he was devastated. So I had a lot of battles to fight just to start with, a lot of negative wizards around me, because all the time he was there telling me, you should be doing something else. But it's been a fantastic life, and it's taken me all over the world, and I've done all sorts of things. So being in prison physically, I found that people, there's about 80,000 odd prisoners at Her Majesty's pleasure at the moment in the UK, but there are hundreds of millions of people that are in prison. These 7 inches, we can send space rockets off, we can go and land on the moon and bring people back, but this 7 inches of space is such an important area to dominate. And like most of you, I didn't do it either. I kept pushing, and that I have a daughter who's on the autistic spectrum. I had 2 elderly parents. My dad ended up in a wheelchair, and I was caring for both of them and sharing my day with the likes of, child killer Myra Hindley and Rose West. And it wasn't just female prison, it was male prisons as well. So I was dealing with the males as well. So it all, it's like a bit of a pearl. It starts off a little bit and it moves on and moves on until you've got this great big ball of lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence. You isolate yourself, your emotions are all over the place. And literally, when you've got personas, when you go into work and you're functioning at work, then you come at home and you're doing this, but you're not doing it completely. And the person you lose is you. And at the time, I didn't see it at all. My world shattered when my daughter took a photograph, and I didn't recognize this person in the photo at all. I had not seen the growth of this whale, because we stopped looking at ourselves. We stopped bothering what we look like, because we don't value it. Being attractive in a male prison is a security risk. So to me, it was a security security blanket really wrapping around me. And then when I started on this area to actually come out, I was amazed. There is so much help there. There are so many people that will support you. There are so many ways to move forward. But until you want that, until you ask for it, I hate to put it like an addiction, but it is. Because when we are the caring environment, we are already predisposed to put people's welfare before our own. And we keep doing it, and we keep doing it, and we keep doing it, whether it's our parents, or whether it's our children, or whether it's our spouse, or whether it's the job and doing extra hours and things like that. We just keep doing it. So taking time for yourself is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And it also gives everybody else your boundaries, because if you don't say no, how do they know when to stop? Because they won't, because they'll keep pushing and you will keep doing. And then in the end, it will just explode. So
I love that quote that you just said, because it really is that pushing the boundaries, because people will always, I think, push onto you. And I know as a business person and speaking with professional speakers, because that's another side of your world as a professional speaker, you speak on stages, on screen, you've got a fantastic YouTube channel. Oh, by the way, folks, let me just show you. If you've got any questions for Linda, by the way, please do put them into the put them into the text, whether that's below or wherever it is here, wherever you're watching. Please do put them in there and tag Linda and tag myself, Lottie Hearn. And you can get all of Linda's connections at herlindasage.com, a website that's appearing here now. But Linda, it is that thing of learning to say no. I think that's especially for women, I think. And oh, geez, you're mentioning names, Moira Hindley and Rose West. And these are names I remember from university in the 80s. And actually, drama students who did a whole play about Moira Hindley, and one of my colleagues who was able to interview her to be able to write the play. And that was in the late 80s. So there's some very, very interesting, not interesting, I'd say intriguing, but it's tough things to find out about people. So I can see how that burnout and how you having to learn to say no, presumably with the prisoner in prison, it's easier to kind of walk away from it. Or so what was it that led, because you actually said it was you needed to take that time to move country to repair and rebuild. Yeah. So what is it about hearing or getting caught up in our own really, really tough times and getting stuck there and not saying no, just doing and helping everybody else? What is it that burns us out so much, Linda?
Well, it's taking on everybody else's stress and worries. I mean, I was fighting the education system for my daughter because she was on the autistic spectrum. So to get her special education, I was fighting the system for my dad to get him. He'd had a cerebral hemorrhage and he was then in hospital. My mum was elderly, caring from him. So I was there for them as well. So I felt as if I was the only one that could do this, because I'm an only child as well. So it's not like but other people have siblings, but then they have problems within the siblings. So sometimes it is better being one, because you get rid of those other problems.
So it's kind of like prison on prison on prison on prison on prison on prison on prison, really. And like with that, you can then see, I was feeling like I can feel the weight of my hands just doing this to me, mentally pushing me down, just even hearing all of those different levels. So Linda, where did you then, let's go the next step of your story then. So from there, and then, by the way, folks, we are going to come back at the end and Linda is going to share some Linda learnings, live Linda learnings about some coping mechanisms that you can actually do for yourself. We will be doing that along the way during the show and recapping at the end for you as well. But Linda, let's go back then. So what did you have to do to feel that you really escaped?
So my dam broke with that picture. My daughter took this picture. We'd gone back to Spain, and I mean, I hadn't been in a swimsuit for years, but we had the house with a swimming pool, and I'd by the swimming pool the day we signed for the house, and I'd literally fallen asleep. And she took this photograph, and it literally looked like a big fat dead woman. And that was said by a friend of mine. That was her daughter when she looked at the picture. Who's this big fat dead woman?
Oh, Linda!
It was me. Honestly, it was. I
having been called fat and ugly myself on camera on this very channel, one of the first videos I put up there, I know that it can go to you, so I know that we have to cope. So you carry on and tell us the coping.
But actually, seeing the picture, I couldn't hide from it anymore, because I'd stopped looking in mirrors. I knew all my clothes felt uncomfortable, but all these excuses come along as they do, and then you sit yourself on the sofa with another packet of biscuits or whatever, and again you're making your self-fulfilling prophecy, so you're making it happen again. So my dam burst, and it was really, really painful. And if you do go on my YouTube and go back to things I was doing then, and you look, there is absolutely very, very little contact, because the emotions were just numbed. They were dead, and getting that sort of emotion back has been a long journey. It's come back over again. And from then I actually started, for the first time in my life, I went to a gym, and I was so scared of going to a gym. I'd never been one in my life, but I actually signed up with a personal trainer, and he was an ex-boxer. Now, this is a person that I've never been into sports. I've never done anything, but he started training me. The first few months, I only went once a week, and I absolutely looked like a beetroot when I got back. But the difference, and I'd never been interested in boxing in my life, but the mentality of the training, and because I'd signed up with somebody, you make the appointment and you go. Whereas if you doing it yourself, you've got to be very, very strong-willed not to make the excuses not to go. So as that started healing, and unfortunately in the next 6 years, as I was getting myself back, I lost my mum, my dad and my husband, and my daughter and I actually came together and coped with it, because if you've got a child with Asperger's and the other autistic spectrum, it's not an easy life living with them. And so coming to terms with that as well. So I became a lot calmer. I was able to see life in a completely different perspective. And that's when I got back in 2011 to actually start working in psychology again. But like everything for me, geography always helps, because I'd got so immersed in my house. I was really, because I knew that house, I was coming out of there in a box, because it was my dream house. But all of a sudden, when I took the work in Saudi, I signed up for a 12-week contract. I actually ended up staying 6.5 years, not all in one go. But coming back to the house after being away for it, I had cut those ties. The emotional ties weren't there. But we all know we stay in relationships too long. We stay in jobs too long. We stay in houses or places too long. But we know inside that things have started to feel wrong. It's overwhelming. But to cut those ties and move, sometimes you need a big step to be able to do it. And other times a small step is quite enough. So it's really important that we start listening to the way we feel, because we know how we feel. We just don't acknowledge it most of the time. So my move to Saudi cut the emotional ties with the house. So when I came back to the house, it didn't have the same pull. And not the first year, but the second year when I was in Saudi, I actually managed to sell the house in Spain. And that was a mammoth task, because I had everybody's effects there as well to sort out, which I did. But doing that was a real step forward for me, because it was like, this is a complete new chapter and I can go on and do other things. Saudi is another story. That's another chapter. Difficult for females, but I was also met amazing people that I would never have met from all around the world. And when you pull together like that, it's really, really important that you mix and mingle with people that are positive. There's not negative people everywhere you are, about choosing the people that surround you as well. And then in 2017, I came back to England. I'd never lived in the north of England. All of my things had been packed up while I was in Saudi, so I didn't even know what had gone into storage with the house. And when I got it all out, it took me months to go through. It was literally ceiling to floor, completely full of boxes, and I had to go through everything and sort it out. So that was another big emotional journey for me. And in June, 5th of June, 2000.
Linda, can I just ask on that one? So do you think that actually clearing out not just the mental clutter, but the physical clutter, do you think that that's something that can help people? Because while you've been chatting, I've just been typing up Linda learnings down below of what I'm hearing as the messages. So mixed with positive peeps. But do you think clearing out that mental and the actual surrounding physical clutter is a core aspect of it?
Oh, totally. I mean, for me, even if it's like during the week and you've put things down because you're in a hurry, by the end of the week, it's got to be cleared. And one of the most important things for me is when you get out of bed in the morning, you make your bed. Because you have a clear bed, and when you go back to bed at night, it's the real concrete action. So getting yourself into actions that reinforce you being in control. An awful lot of people, when they have a fear or a panic attack, double over. But what happens when we double over is we jam all our central organs, especially our lungs, and the lungs is where we need the air. So literally, just by unwinding yourself, sitting up, putting your shoulders back, or if you're in bed, laying flat on your back, because normally you go over into the fetal position and curl up. Whereas if just laying back, you've opened all your lungs up and you are back in control. So it's about getting that control in, because when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's like you're in a fog, in a mist. You're inside a duvet and you can't get out. Whereas if you take them into single pieces, single strands, this is what we do. We normally just go back and unwind a little bit, take each of the strands and then deal with that. And it's much more manageable. So it's really important.
I love it, Linda, because it's just bringing so many things back into my mind again about presenting on camera, being on camera, and topics that I've been coaching for years and speaking about for years and years and years, decades actually now, of the fact that you have to be sitting upright and open, and that looking up to camera gives you that sense of you're looking up and out, projecting your voice out through the camera and connecting to that real person. But then you mentioning about like the strands, because of one story I heard years ago back, I can't even remember, may have been from Hong Kong, but it may have been from Australia, about how like love is like a violin bow. And as you're playing with the violin bow, strands might snap, but you can always add another string to your bow. But when you get into tough times, it's like suddenly somebody's trying to go ping, 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 ping with every string. And I think that I used to think when I was younger that was because somebody else did it. And it was only getting older and a little bit wiser, and a little bit older, that I kind of clocked, no, it's not somebody else breaking the strings on my bow. It's actually me playing too hard with it. So accepting that responsibility, I think, was a key aspect for me. But I love that openness that you were saying there.
And personal accountability, I mean, that's a huge one. If every single person is responsible for themselves, it's not about being egoistic or standing on the top of the roof shouting out how wonderful I am. But if you know yourself and you're accountable for yourself, then everything else works. You know, a lot of other conflicts, yeah, somebody else can have an opinion. That's fine. Thank you for your opinion, but it doesn't need to impact on me. And right back in 2000, actually, we did some work in a school, in a boys' school, big boys' school in Kent, and like many schools, there's lots and lots of steps, and they were having a huge amount of accidents with boys on the steps. So what we did, we took a year group and gave them the personal accountability for their own actions, not worried about what anybody else was doing. Just every time they walked, they would not engage with anything else, or they wouldn't do anything else to hurt themselves or hurt anybody else. You know, within about 3 weeks, the amount of accidents had gone from a huge amount up in the 80%. It was really ridiculous, down into about 3 or 4%. So just taking that personal accountability, doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. If it's right for you, then do it. And that's the whole thing, because you can't do it for anybody else, and you can't do it on behalf of anybody else. It has to be for you. And that's why you have to hit that place to want to then change to do it.
And talking about taking personal responsibility, I didn't mute my microphone there, folks. So sorry if you heard clack, 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 clack on the keyboards with over while Linda was talking. Yeah, see, my brain has so gone like with Linda right here that I'm losing the sensibility of my words. I'm fuddling my words, as they say. Linda, that whole kind of the self-responsibility, take personal accountability for your own actions. How do we equate back to that? Like, because I know when you came back from the next stage in your story is when you came back in 2017, that's when you launched your own business, Successful Mindset Ltd, and you published your book, Caring for the Caregiver. So how does this relate to kind of personal accountability if we are so overwhelmed with whether it's being stuck in a prison or having a physical or mental illness issue in the family, or just not being able to cope with what's going on? And if anybody's got any questions, as I said, please do write them down and tag both myself and Linda, and we can come back and give you some tips afterwards, after the show as well. So how does that personal accountability equate when you're not even at a stage like for getting on camera? You're just going, no, don't want to do this. No, showing that, and you're saying, stop, I don't want to do it. So how do we take away that metaphorical stop hand for ourselves so that we can take personal accountability.
Right. Okay, just think back when we came into the world. No matter who you are, where you are, we were the same as a baby, right? That baby doesn't know the color of its skin, doesn't have any beliefs or habits or behaviors or attitudes or fears or phobias, anything like this. Everything along the pathway has been learnt. And personal responsibility is when you are in a culture, when you're in an environment, your learning, your knowledge, your experience will all give you textures and colors within your lives. And that's what you believe is the truth. But the truth is not the truth. The truth is how you see it. So being accountable, and this is why when we travel and people do things in a different way, it opens up and it's like, oh yeah, possible we can do it another way. Yeah. When you think about my dad's generation, for him to be served with pasta or rice that wasn't a rice pudding, that was savoury rice, was like, now we see people on TV eating bugs. And it's like, what? Different. What's to say it's wrong? It's just different. We have the choice. And the other thing is we have at least 60,000 thoughts a day going around in our mind, right? When are we given up personal accountability? We think these are just going on their own. They're not. It's our mind, our thoughts. And it's about going back and taking control of them. So if you think about the way you speak to yourself, if you spoke to a friend like that, do you think you'd be friends very long? So if you are not loving you, how can anybody else? So it's really important taking that responsibility. If your thoughts are making you sad, then take control of them. Listen to them. Actually, physically, you might have to physically start by, when that thought comes into your mind, think where it's come from and change it. Keeping up with all the thoughts is hard. So thoughts cause emotions, and the emotions cause the behavior. So if you get to the feeling, even like with anxiety, when you're starting to feel that sort of bubbling up, because we don't just go into anxiety, bang, we start feeling it, even with bipolar and with the Asperger's and things like this, when you feel it bubbling. So if you take it in that time, you can actually look at it and think, right, what has made me feel like this? Then you can look at your thoughts. Then you can change your thoughts and you can make the feeling change. So it's about taking back that control, because normally when we're feeling so emotional and overwhelmed, we feel like we're out of control. So taking those reins back is the most important thing that we can do. And we do that by looking at each individual one. You can't eat an elephant in one go, but you can do it if you dissect it. So that's the important part, to take the control back. So your personal accountability for yourself, what you allow other people to do, because if you don't set your boundaries, then how do anybody else know where it is? I mean, for example, when I'm working in a prison, I was brought up in a generation where you don't swear. You don't use swear words normally in a conversation. Younger people now, it's sort of more in a conversation form. But for example, if I'm working with anybody, whether it's an individual or a group, nobody swears in the room. When they first come in, they're effing and blah, 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 blah. Oh, this is just how I am. Well, no, it's not who you are. It's how you choose to be. So you take back that control and say, there's enough words in all of the languages to express yourself without swearing. So let's find those words. And because it's a roll on, roll off process, that I've already got people that have got used to that. So they actually start governing the people that come in. And one of the things I used to do, and I'm actually going to start bringing it back, is no whinge Wednesday. All right. So I have motivational Monday, and I'm going to start this back up again. No whinge Wednesday. So whenever you start saying, oh, I don't like this. Oh, it's difficult. Oh, I don't know how to do it. Oh, don't really want to do it. Stop. Now, I used to say, put 20p in a pot. Every time you whinge on a Wednesday, you put 20p in a pot. And that way you can actually see how negative you are being. And also, when it adds up, you can treat yourself to something nice. So that's a really good thing to do to start with.
That's how a lot of parents do swear jars for their kids. It's fun. It's so funny listening to you. I'm kind of thinking of so many different stories from my own past, from stories with other people, and I'm loving the Inspiration Mondays and no whinge Wednesdays. Could you have a tough times Tuesday where you could have a tough times day and then discuss it so that you can get rid of it at the same time?
You could have a different topic for every day of the week if you wanted to.
There you go. You could have a different topic. So was all of this kind of learning that? So this was all learning you had gained, Linda, from practically having to live through it, having to escape from it, and also having obviously studied your psychology as well, and as a criminal psychologist specialist, the expert that you have been. So is this kind of that knowledge and skill that led you to writing your book, Caring for the Caregiver? Because that was the next step, was to twist from giving care yourself to other people and in the psychological side of things, to actually creating and shifting your business into caring for caregivers. So presumably that's nurses, doctors, prison workers, anybody who looks after anybody else in the home, solo families.
I must admit, it started off with the premise of being professional caregivers, so all the emergency services, doctors, nurses, and things like this. But it's evolved really into volunteers, into home-based carers, because they're all affected exactly the same way. When I went to Saudi and talking to the nurses and doctors and things, because I was doing a lot of work with them about self-confidence, and when you work in a multicultural team, there's lots of other issues as well, because people look at things in a completely different way. So it sort of came about through that and talking to other people in lots of different countries, and all of a sudden it's like, it's not just me, or it's not just because I was in this particular area, it's epidemic. We talk about pandemics in flu and all sorts of other things. Burnout within care industry is absolutely pandemic, and it's been there for years, and it's not been. I saw my mum get totally broken down by caring for my dad. She was older, and her life was always it's my duty. She would not accept any care. So in the end, I mean, she literally on a winter's night just walked out in a nightdress in the street. She'd got to the stage, and that's a whole different story. So, but that is,
that's kind of, I think that's where a lot of people are feeling that especially after a tough time of being stuck in your own body, in your own mind, in your own home, like during the COVID pandemic and lockdowns all around the world. So was it very, very different then? Because obviously for what we hear about what's happening in Saudi, and for me, it was a campaign back in 2018, actually, for women drivers. I was trying to help the women to trying to sort of message out videos as much as I possibly could, trying to share. And I think, again, that's the impact of using live stream and live tools, and why I call everything live. Doesn't matter if it's a pre-recorded video. If you present it as if it's live style presenting, it's next generation learning, but it's cross generation. So, I mean, you were talking about your mum, cross culture, talking about, so can you kind of link, what's the easiest way to kind of link all of your learnings between your own personal story, cross-generational, your mum and your daughter on the autistic spectrum? And hello to April, if you're watching. She's one of our lovely live streamers, been live streaming about autism for years and years and years and years now. So how can we kind of link that cross-generation, cross-culture learning that then cross-industry that you were doing, but you started with the caregivers? How can you kind of, the learning that you've done, linked it all together, relate that back even more to individual people who are finding fears of doing something? Can you share a story or link some of that somehow together for us, Linda?
I mean, my biggest thing in this is talk. And especially for males, because males don't like talking about mental health. They don't like talking about fears and phobias because they think it's unmanly, especially across cultures as well, things like this. To me, once you can get over getting rid of the stigma that mental health is just the same as physical health. It should have the same value. If somebody's got a broken arm, then automatically you can see people are more sympathetic, they're more understanding. Whereas if somebody is going through a depression and people can't see it, they can just see them the outside, and they tend to think, oh, they're grumpy or they're moany, they don't want to engage, they don't want to talk, or they're quiet, they're shy. So talking to people, getting this open and making it just another subject. There's lots and lots of people. 1 in 4 adults take time off through some mental health issue in their working life. And this is going to get more. It's not going to get less. And people would prefer to say they've actually been in a prison on their CV than they've had time off through mental illness. So it's really, really important that the value shift here is taken over and said, if we can teach this to children, because unfortunately, self-care doesn't come until much later on in your life. If we can teach this to a young children from the time they start off, what message are you giving your children? What message are you giving your team, your spouse, all the people around you? If you are not caring for yourself, they're learning that same message. I'm not important. It doesn't matter. People can abuse me. Then your children go off and get in an abusive relationship, or they get into things that harm them. They've already got this mindset. So, teaching the value, and even the old-fashioned learning to dance, because you respect the space of people. You can touch the opposite sex without having emotional or physical attachment to that. So there's ways of doing things, but it's about taking that back and going. It's not about being brutal or egoistic or going back to Victorian, being seen and not heard. It's very much about being open and sharing. And the more people that do it, the more people that extend their knowledge. And I'm lucky in the respect that I've had that as a background. So yes, I've got the credibility for the credentials, but all the learning that I didn't set me up with the theory. The practical is so much more. And the more you can share, every single person, and I tend to say very much, mental health is a bit like opening a safe, right? You can hear my story and it might be one click. You'll hear Lottie's story and it'll be another click. And you'll hear somebody else's story a little bit from it'll be another click. Until you get enough clicks to open the safe door. And once you've opened the safe door, inside, you've got an onion. And then you've got to start peeling back the layers. Because what you do is you build up a wall. This denial is like an eggshell. It's really tough on the outside and you're all wobbly and mushy on the inside. So breaking through that shell and then coming out and repairing and sharing your emotions again is a long, long journey. So if we can get people not to go into it, if we can prepare them beforehand, we're going to save so much hurt and so much pain. If you imagine going back to being a teenager with all your anxiety about crossing the room. I mean, in my day, you had to cross the room to actually speak to somebody, to go and ask them to dance, or you had to talk to somebody next to you, perhaps in a bar or something, or going for a coffee. Whereas now people are so much online and things like this. But that confidence, if we could have got rid of all that anxiety and just given people the confidence to be able to do it, it's so important. So start young, get your youngsters to value themselves. And that's really important, because hopefully we can get rid of this. If we prevent it, it's much better than cure. But unfortunately, secondary stress, trauma, compassion fatigue is right throughout the world. It doesn't matter. I say it's a bit like cancer in the respect. It doesn't matter about your gender. It doesn't matter about your age. It doesn't matter about your experience. It will hit you. If you keep giving and giving and giving, and you're not taking back and looking after yourself, you will burn out.
I'm just kind of like going compassion fatigue. Like that is just what a bombshell. That's broken the eggshell that we've got going on here, Linda. That really, really has. And we only really got through half of your story there, Linda. But I see we're after about 45 minutes in. We've got about another 5 minutes or so left. But Linda, so now you've kind of moved into the world of international speaking. Let me just remove this for you because I want to show people where they can contact you. lindasage.com. That's where you can get in touch with Linda. You can please tweet her at Meet Linda Sage. Send her a little song on Twitter. And so at Meet Linda Sage is on Twitter. LinkedIn, if you're a business person and you're wanting to connect on the speaking, the professional, the corporate side of things, and because Linda does regularly go and work with corporate businesses and leadership teams to bring this whole wealth of knowledge and that prison of the mind. And I think especially as people are learning to conversations, I was hearing in Dublin of offices of 750 people, legal offices, that after COVID, they could only fit in 130 people because of the 2 meter distancing, physical distancing rules. Yeah. So that is going to stress some people. But then there's also the another learning from that was that governments may be telling us everybody's desperate to get out there and desperate to get back to work. But a number of companies, and again, from somebody who was part of this research, 45% of their office weren't interested. They weren't interested in ever going back to the office ever again. So life and the world in 2020 changed. Changed, and it's worlds that we've been predicting in the live stream world of this communication for a long time. So the business world, yes, you want Linda to come and speak for you to get these amazing tips, because we've only cracked the eggshell. We haven't got all the way into the yolk yet. But Facebook, you can find Linda J. Sage. So please do get in touch with her there. And we'll go back to your website because all the links and everything's there, Linda, isn't it? On the website.
Yeah.
And you'll also find Linda's whole story. So, Linda, when you were saying it took you 11 years, 6 months and 17 days to walk into a prison again, thinking that this is the prison of the mindset for the confidence to do these kinds of things, what kind of freedoms does it give somebody to revisit or to rethink? For somebody who's gone, no, I don't want to be on video. Take that camera off me. I don't want to have confidence. Coming back to it again, what freedom does it give you by rethinking, as you've said?
So that time frame again was actually the physical going back into prison. So that was when I walked back into an HMP, actually here in Leeds. But
to do the coaching.
Yeah, to actually walk through the door. Even though I'd come through my journey, it was still a big step to step over that step again. It brought a lot of things back. So even when we think we dealt with it, until we really come face to face with it, it can bubble up again. But control means that you make your choices. Because very often up here we are screaming, no, I don't want to do that. And yet what comes out here? Yes, because we are either into the mode of people pleasing, or we have less value for ourselves than we have for other people because we put their needs before ours. So if saying yes to somebody else means saying no to yourself, you are in muddy waters. So it's about taking that control. If you don't want to go on camera and speak, that is fine, because it's not everybody that wants to do it. But if you do want to do it, then saying to yourself, okay, this is a learning curve. None of us, Lottie or myself or anybody else, when we started, did we feel confident? That's what I'm saying. You go back and look at my early ones, and I'm stood there and I'm quite like rabbit in the headlights. So until you start progressing, it's little steps. You're not going to be one day being scared of the camera and the next day being Meryl Streep. You know, it's about a progression and about building yourself up, building your confidence, being around people. You know, if you want to be a speaker, or if you want to be doing things on YouTube and things like this, you need to be mixing around people that are doing it, because there are going to be people that are ahead of you in your journey and there's people behind you. So you learn from people that are ahead of you, and you are passing knowledge back to people that are coming on, and people are incredibly generous. So giving all this information, and lots of people, especially being in a corporate world, I found, because I wasn't in corporate, I was in academia and health, but it's still very much like that. Everybody's like, oh, I can't give out information because somebody's going to take my job. Whereas when you get into entrepreneurship, it's a completely different ballgame. People will talk to you. If you ask, put it out there, people will answer you. Not everybody will give you 100% of golden nugget value, but you pick and choose. I was lucky. One of my first mentors was Jim Rowan. Now he's just phenomenal. And I start my day with him every single day. And again, another thing that I say is, every day you spend time in the shower or in the bath, you wash your hair, you clean your teeth. So maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes morning and evening. So if you are spending that amount of time on your outside, you should be spending that much time on your inside. So whether you are listening to podcasts, whether you are reading, whether you're writing, you could be writing your own things, all sorts of things out there now. There is so much to choose from. Flick about, find what works for you. Not everybody works for you. I don't like, for example, probably loads of people will be going, oh, but I don't like Tony Robbins. To me, he can do what he does. But could you imagine me doing what he's doing? It doesn't fit. So I wouldn't naturally progress.
I think that's so key, Linda. That's so key with the fitting for it, because a lot of people say, oh, meditate. You meditate for this time of day, meditate for 15 minutes, meditate. I'm like, I've never got into meditation because I'm quite happy to sit quietly on my own at any time. Coming from a boarding school, being on your own was one of the things that you got very, very used to doing. And as a single child, a lot of single children say that as well. And the whole, I know a lot of people agree with the meditation, but for me, there are moments of meditation. For me, I'd rather do my actor breathing, my stage breathing into my bum, as we say, breathing into the bottom of your stomach, not that's going to cause the physical stress that you were talking about. And your quote earlier, the compassion fatigue, I was also thinking there's comparison fatigue as well. With you were saying about mix with other people who do it, and that is the next generation, cross culture. And we always say in the live world and being on camera, go and find people you love to watch, whether that be TV, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you watch live, Twitch, Periscope, Insta TV, whatever you do, find the people you love and emulate the best that you see that would fit you. Because you don't have to be like me. You don't have to be like Linda. You don't have to be Tony Robbins. You got to be you with all of that. So I think the wrapping up here, Linda, the best thing we can say is escape your prison fears by escaping the comparison fatigue and bringing in the compassion to yourself. Would that be let's do a nutshell wrap up for you, Linda, and while you're doing that, I'll put you on screen and I'll share some more of your links. And thank you to everybody who's been able to join us and for any comments that you've been able to give. We'll come back to your questions as soon as we can.
Yeah, no, it's great. Everybody's in a different stage of their life, and it doesn't matter when you start this. You're never too young, you're never too old, but being in control and feeling happy in your own skin. You might not have everything you want, but being content with what you have until you get what you want. Setting your goals, write them down. Just by writing them down, you're 50% more likely to achieve them. So you're ahead of the ball game. Being able to communicate, you're ahead of the ball game. You're ahead of your people around you. just by caring for yourself. We've got to have been blind, deaf and dumb if we haven't got the message. 7 hours sleep, hydrate, eat well, exercise moderately. It is everywhere. But knowing it and doing it are two different things. If you value yourself as much as you value everybody else, game over. You're equal. You're not more important, but you're definitely as important. If you have a diary, whether it's an online diary or a physical diary, write in your appointments for you. What do you like to do? The first thing I find with a lot of people, I speak to them and they're telling me all the things they don't like, they don't want. But when I just turn around, well, what do you like? What do you want? And it's like, whoa, I don't know. Just turn those phrases around. Instead of I don't want to be late, I want to be on time. Just the simple thing of thinking in the positive will change your world around, because you are taking yourself from the negative wizard to a positive wizard for you and for everybody around you. Because you just think, if you've got people that are moaning all the time, Whingy Wednesday, do you actually want to spend time with them? But 9 times out of 10, it could be you. So change that and be your positive wizard for you and for everybody else, and you will change their life too as well.
I love that. Be the positive wizard. That's a lovely one. And I also love what you said here, find what you like. Because Linda, that was one of the things I learned first coaching TV presenters back in the 90s in Australia, was that the first thing people would do was spot what they don't like about themselves. And it's, I don't like that, and I don't like that, and I don't like that. And that's the kind of judgment devil I've spoken about before. And bring in your perception angel. You can't please every viewer all of the time, but you can find what you like about you, about others you see, emulate them, and be the best you that you like on screen. There's going to be things that you do that really irritate you, but your aim is purely to help the viewer like watching you and have some fun with you. So that's our inspiration, edutainment that we bring to screen. So Linda, thank you so much for Find What You Like. I like this lady a lot. This brain makes a whole lot of sense to me. So thank you for being live with Lottie today and for sharing your gems. And remember, everybody, you can connect with Linda Sage below. And before we go, Linda, we're going to have to do the freeze frame with the smile. So let me get my Snipply, because remember, folks, the more that you can get promos with everybody, that's the good thing to do for yourself. So I'm going to keep Linda on screen for a couple of seconds at the end of the show, and we're going to film a little promo for each other. So if you're still watching, you're going to see an example of how a live promo testimonial can work for you. So Linda, put your hand up, give us a big grin, and I will take the photo right now. Hold the hand up. Yeah, other side. Yay. That's brilliant. Got one there. Okay. So Linda, what I want to say about you is a big thank you to Linda. I was her radio host interview the other week, and being on Linda's radio show, she purely brings out the best that you can bring. She leaves you to be open to share your story, your knowledge, your expertise. I've seen some of the best international global live speakers on her radio shows based in Leeds in the UK. So if you get the chance or the invitation from Linda to be part of her live story with your voice, you can be just a voice too, as Linda said in the show With Me to You. So thank you, Linda, for bringing your knowledge, your expertise, and sharing it out with the world. This woman is an absolute star, and she can help you break free of your prison anytime you choose.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everybody here. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Linda. And everybody, viewers, thank you very much for watching us. See you live with Lottie next week, Friday on Facebook, recording on Thursdays, live to YouTube. So see you then, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Ciao, folks.
Yo, other one.
And let's get the pictures off screen. Yay. Oh, and now I've done something really funny with the screen, folks. This is what happens. Technical glitches and hitches. But we'll love you and leave you there. Thanks, Linda. Bye.